What would you do if the person you tried to embarrass quietly turned the tables, leaving you with nothing but empty boxes and a cancelled future? I'm Eveene Door, and I thought I was being progressive, modern, and emotionally evolved. Instead, I learned that some boundaries shouldn't be crossed, and some men fight back, not with fists or screaming matches, but with something far more devastating: the law. The engagement party was supposed to be perfect. Nathan had booked Meridian, the upscale restaurant downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Our families filled the private dining room, champagne glasses catching the golden hour light. I felt beautiful in my emerald dress, the one that brought out my eyes and made my dark hair shine. To Eveene and Nathan, my mother Clara Ara raised her glass, beaming with pride. May your love story inspire us all. I smiled, squeezing Nathan's hand under the table. He looked handsome in his navy suit, though I noticed the slight tension in his jaw. He'd been quiet all week, ever since I'd mentioned my surprise guest. Actually, I stood up, my heart racing with excitement. I have someone special I'd like you all to meet. Someone who's been incredibly important to my journey of self-discovery. Nathan's grip on my hand tightened. I could feel his eyes on me, but I kept my gaze on the door where Julian Marrow had just walked in. My ex-boyfriend looked exactly as I remembered. Tall, confident, with that photographer's eye that seemed to capture everything. His dark hair was perfectly tousled, and he wore a casual blazer that somehow made everyone else look overdressed. "Everyone, this is Julian," I announced, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. Julian and I dated for 2 years, and he's taught me so much about love, growth, and what it means to be emotionally mature. The silence was deafening. I could feel Nathan's hand slip away from mine as Julian approached our table with that easy smile I'd fallen for years ago. "Thank you for having me, Eveene," Julian said, his voice warm and familiar. "I wouldn't have missed celebrating your happiness." My father Alan cleared his throat uncomfortably. Nathan's mother Maggie looked like she'd swallowed her wine wrong, but my mother was nodding approvingly, and that gave me courage. "I believe in modern love," I continued, still standing. "I believe we can honor our past while embracing our future. Julian will always be part of my story, and I want him to be part of this celebration too." Julian raised his own glass, which he'd somehow acquired from a passing server. "To Eveene," he said, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my cheeks flush. "The most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Nathan, you're getting someone truly special. Someone who taught me that love isn't about possession, it's about appreciation." I felt a thrill run through me. This was exactly what I'd hoped for. A mature, evolved celebration that showed everyone how emotionally intelligent I was. "Julian," I said, raising my glass to meet his, "thank you for helping me become the woman I am today." As we clinked glasses, I caught Nathan's expression in my peripheral vision. His face had gone completely pale, and his hands were clenched in his lap. His brother Oliver was staring at his plate, while Maggie looked like she might stand up and leave. "This is beautiful," my mother whispered to me as I sat back down. "So progressive, so mature." But my father was frowning. "Eveene," he said quietly, "perhaps we should focus on the future tonight." "This is about the future, Dad," I replied. "It's about showing that we can transcend traditional jealousy and small-mindedness." Nathan finally spoke, his voice tight. "Eveene, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Whatever you need to say, you can say here," I replied, feeling confident and in control. "We're all family." Julian had taken an empty seat at our table, somehow inserting himself into our intimate circle. He was telling my mother about his photography work, his charm working its magic. I felt validated. See how easy this was. See how mature we could all be. "I think I need some air," Nathan said, standing abruptly. "Nathan," I called after him, but he was already walking toward the restaurant's terrace. I started to follow, but Julian caught my arm gently. "Let him process," he said softly. Change is hard for some people. I nodded, settling back into my seat. Julian was right. Nathan just needed time to adjust to my progressive thinking. The rest of the evening continued with Julian, effortlessly charming my parents and telling stories about our travels together years ago. Every anecdote felt like validation of my choices. When Nathan returned from the terrace 20 minutes later, his face was composed but distant. "Feeling better?" I asked, reaching for his hand. "Fine," he said simply, but he didn't squeeze back. As the evening wound down, Julian pulled out his phone and asked the server to take a photo of our table. "For memories," he said, flashing that photographer's smile. Later that night, as Nathan and I rode home in silence, I felt accomplished. I'd shown everyone that I was evolved, mature, capable of complex emotional intelligence. I'd proven that modern love could transcend petty jealousies. I was scrolling through social media when I saw it. Julian had posted the photo from dinner with the caption, "Celebrating the one that got away." Some stories never really end. Modern love, or grateful, or memories. Without thinking, I commented, "Some connections transcend time. Thank you for being part of my journey." I hit send before I realized Nathan was reading over my shoulder. "Eveene," his voice was very quiet. "What exactly are you doing?" I looked up at him, seeing something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, but something colder, something that made my stomach drop. "I'm just being friendly," I said. "It's called emotional maturity, Nathan." He stared at me for a long moment, then walked to our bedroom without another word. The next morning, Nathan left for work without his usual goodbye kiss. I told myself he was just processing, that he'd come around once he saw how evolved our relationship could be. I had bigger plans anyway. I drove to my parents' house, finding my mother in her pristine kitchen, already dressed and organizing her day planner. She looked up with bright eyes when I walked in. "Darling, last night was wonderful. Julian is even more charming than I remembered." "That's actually what I wanted to talk about," I said, settling onto one of the bar stools. "I have an idea for the wedding, and I want your honest opinion." My mother poured me coffee in one of her good china cups. "I'm listening." "What if Julian walked me down the aisle?" The coffee pot froze halfway to the counter. "What?" "Think about it, Mom. Dad's great, but this would be such a powerful statement. Julian represents my past, my growth, my journey to finding Nathan. Having him literally walk me toward my future would be so symbolic." My mother set down the pot carefully. That's actually brilliant, Eveene. It's so modern, so emotionally sophisticated. Right? It shows that I'm not ashamed of my past, that I can integrate all parts of my story." "What does Nathan think?" I waved my hand dismissively. "He's still adjusting to the idea. You know how traditional men can be about these things, but he'll see the beauty in it once he thinks it through." My father walked into the kitchen at that moment, already dressed for his law firm in his perfectly pressed suit. "What will Nathan see the beauty in?" "Eveene wants Julian to walk her down the aisle," my mother announced proudly. Dad stopped pouring his coffee. "Julian, your ex-boyfriend Julian." "Yes, Dad. It's about emotional evolution, about showing that—" "Eveene." His voice had that lawyer tone I remembered from childhood. "Have you considered how this might look to others? To Nathan's family? To your professional colleagues?" "I don't care how it looks, Dad. I care about being authentic." He sighed, sitting across from me. "Sweetheart, sometimes authenticity and wisdom aren't the same thing. This could cause serious problems." "The only problem is people being small-minded," I replied. "Mum gets it." "Your mother and I don't always agree on these things," he said carefully, glancing at her. "But this is your wedding, your choice. Just think carefully about the consequences." I left feeling validated by my mother's support and dismissive of my father's concerns. Nathan would understand eventually. I just needed to present it the right way. That evening, I made Nathan's favorite dinner. herb-crusted salmon with asparagus. I waited until he'd had a few bites and seemed relaxed before bringing up my idea. "I've been thinking about the wedding ceremony," I began casually. "Oh?" He looked up, and I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Maybe he thought I was going to scale back Julian's involvement. "I want it to be really meaningful, really symbolic of our journey together." "That sounds nice." So I was thinking Julian could walk me down the aisle. Nathan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down very carefully, staring at his plate for a long moment. "Julian," he repeated slowly. "Your ex-boyfriend, Julian." "Nathan, hear me out. It would be so beautiful, having him represent my past, literally walking me toward my future with you. It's about integration, about showing that love doesn't have to be possessive or jealous." "Eveene." His voice was very calm, which somehow made it more unsettling than if he'd yelled. "Are you serious right now?" "Completely serious. It's about emotional maturity." "Emotional maturity?" He was still staring at his plate. "Is that what we're calling this? What would you call it?" He looked up at me then, and again I saw that cold something in his eyes. "I'd call it humiliating." "Nathan, that's exactly the kind of small-minded thinking we need to move beyond. This isn't about you or your ego. This is about me, about my journey, about showing the world that modern love can transcend traditional limitations." "Your journey," he repeated. "And where exactly do I fit into your journey, Eveene? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like I'm just the consolation prize at the end of a parade celebrating your ex-boyfriend." "Don't be ridiculous. You're my future, Nathan. Julian is my past." "Then why does your past need to walk you down the aisle? Why does your past need to toast our engagement? Why does your past need to be part of every major moment in our relationship?" I felt my cheeks flush. "Because I'm not ashamed of who I was before I met you. Because I believe in honoring all the experiences that made me who I am." "And what about honoring me? What about honoring us?" "This is about us, Nathan. It's about showing that our love is strong enough to include my whole story." He pushed back from the table, his dinner barely touched. "Do you even need me at this wedding, Eveene? Or am I just there to make it legally binding?" "Now you're being dramatic." "Am I?" He stood up, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Because it seems like Julian is giving the toasts. Julian is walking you down the aisle. Julian is the star of your love story. I'm starting to wonder what role I actually play here." "You're being insecure." "Maybe I am," he said quietly. "Maybe any man would be insecure about marrying a woman who seems more interested in celebrating her ex than her fiancé." He left the kitchen, and I heard the bedroom door close. I sat there feeling frustrated and misunderstood. Why couldn't he see how beautiful this could be? Why was he being so traditional, so possessive? I texted my mother. "Nathan's having trouble with the aisle idea. He'll come around." She texted back immediately. "Men need time to adjust to progressive thinking. You're doing something revolutionary, darling." That made me feel better. I was being revolutionary. I was pushing boundaries, challenging conventions, showing the world what evolved love looked like. Nathan would thank me eventually, once he saw how much attention and admiration my choices brought us. I was right, and he was wrong. It was that simple. The wedding rehearsal arrived on a crisp Friday evening in October. St. Mary's Cathedral looked beautiful, with the late afternoon light streaming through the stained glass windows, casting colourful patterns across the stone floor. Our wedding party assembled in the vestibule. My 3 bridesmaids, Nathan's 2 groomsmen, plus his brother Oliver as best man, and of course, Julian. Julian looked perfect, as always. He wore a charcoal grey suit that complemented his photographer's aesthetic, and he'd brought his camera to document behind-the-scenes moments for my social media. I'd asked him to capture the rehearsal process. It would make such great content, showing how modern and evolved our wedding was. "All right, everyone," Father McKenna addressed our group with practiced authority. "Let's walk through the processional order. Bridesmaids first, then the bride with her escort. The priest's slight pause wasn't lost on me, but I held my head high. I'd explained the situation to him weeks ago, and while he'd expressed some concerns, he'd ultimately agreed to respect our choices. Nathan stood at the altar with Oliver, both men in dark suits, both wearing expressions I couldn't quite read. Nathan had been increasingly quiet all week, responding to my wedding planning updates with nods and one-word answers. I told myself it was just pre-wedding nerves. "Julian," I said, linking my arm through his, "ready to make history." He smiled down at me, that easy confidence radiating from him. "Always ready for you, Eveene." As we began our practice walk down the aisle, I felt a thrill of vindication. This was beautiful. This was meaningful. The symbolism was perfect. My past literally delivering me to my future. I could already imagine the wedding photos, the social media posts, the conversations this would generate about modern love and emotional evolution. Julian walked with perfect poise, his photographer's eye naturally finding the best angles, the most flattering light. When we reached the altar, he turned to Nathan with that charming smile. "Take good care of her," Julian said, his voice carrying in the cathedral's acoustics. "She's extraordinary." Nathan's response was barely audible. "I know what she is." Something in his tone made me glance at him sharply, but his face was composed, professional. Maybe I'd misheard. After the rehearsal, we moved to Romano's for the dinner. I'd reserved their private dining room, decorated with white flowers and soft lighting. Our families filled 2 long tables, and I'd made sure Julian was seated prominently, right between my parents. As the evening progressed, Julian naturally became the center of attention. He told stories about his photography travels, shared amusing anecdotes about art gallery openings, and charmed everyone with his worldly perspective. I felt proud watching him. This was exactly what I'd hoped for. "Eveene and I traveled through Europe together," Julian was saying to my Aunt Linda. "She has this incredible eye for beauty, for finding magic in unexpected places. I probably took my best photographs during those months, just trying to see the world through her eyes." I felt my cheeks warm with pleasure. This was what I'd missed, being seen, being appreciated for my depth and complexity. "That sounds wonderful," Aunt Linda replied, then glanced toward Nathan. "Nathan, have you and Eveene traveled much together?" Nathan looked up from his barely touched dinner. "We went to Chicago last year for a weekend." The comparison hung awkwardly in the air. Julian smoothly filled the silence. "Travel changes you, doesn't it? Eveene came back from that trip completely transformed, more confident, more sure of what she wanted from life." "And what did she want?" This came from Maggie, Nathan's mother, her voice carefully neutral. Julian's eyes found mine across the table. "She wanted to live authentically, to stop settling for ordinary when she was meant for extraordinary." I felt a flutter of something, pride, validation, maybe a little nostalgia. Nathan's fork clinked against his plate as he set it down. "Excuse me," Nathan said, standing. "I need some air." "Nathan," I called, but he was already walking toward the restaurant's exit. I started to follow, but Julian caught my attention. "Let me propose a toast," Julian announced, raising his wine glass. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. "To Eveene, who taught me that love isn't about holding on, it's about letting go. Tomorrow she's marrying Nathan, and I couldn't be happier for her. But tonight, I want to celebrate the journey that brought her here." He paused, his eyes meeting mine, with an intensity that made my heart race. "Eveene, you showed me what it means to love fearlessly, to live without apology, to choose adventure over safety. Nathan is getting a woman who will never be ordinary, who will never settle, who will always choose growth over comfort. That's a rare gift." The room erupted in applause, but I noticed several people weren't clapping. Maggie sat with her hands in her lap, her face carefully blank. Oliver was staring at his wineglass. My father was applauding politely, but his expression was troubled. "That was beautiful," my mother whispered to me. "So heartfelt." I felt emotional, touched by Julian's words. This was exactly what I'd wanted: recognition of my complexity, my depth, my refusal to be ordinary. Nathan returned as the applause died down, his face composed but distant. He took his seat without comment, and the conversation gradually resumed around us. Later, as people were saying their goodbyes, I overheard Oliver talking quietly to his mother near the coat check. "This is insane, Mom. She's practically throwing her ex-boyfriend in Nathan's face." "I know, honey, but what can we do? Nathan's made his choice." "Has he, though? Because he looks like he's about to walk away from the whole thing." I felt a spike of anxiety. That was ridiculous. Nathan was just adjusting to my progressive approach. He'd be fine once we were married, once the attention died down and we could settle into our new normal. But as we drove home that night, Nathan's silence felt different, heavier. When I tried to take his hand, he didn't pull away, but he didn't squeeze back either. "Julian's toast was beautiful," I said, trying to break the tension. I think people are starting to understand what we're doing, how evolved this all is." Nathan pulled into our driveway and sat for a moment with the engine running. "Eveene," he said finally, "do you love me?" "Of course I love you. What kind of question is that? Do you love me, or do you love the idea of being the kind of person who could marry me while staying friends with her ex?" I stared at him. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" He turned off the engine. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm a prop in your story about how emotionally evolved you are." "Nathan, you're being ridiculous." He got out of the car without responding, and I sat there for a moment, feeling frustrated and misunderstood. Why couldn't he see how lucky he was? How many men got to marry a woman confident enough, secure enough, evolved enough to integrate her past into her future? I was doing something revolutionary, something that would inspire other couples to transcend jealousy and possessiveness. Nathan just needed to catch up to my level of emotional sophistication. Inside, I posted a photo from the dinner on Instagram. Julian and me laughing at something he'd said, both of us looking radiant and happy. I captioned it, "Grateful for the people who helped shape me into the woman I am today. Tomorrow starts a new chapter, but I'll never forget the beautiful pages that came before." Modern love, grateful and authentic blessed. The likes and comments started immediately. Friends praising my maturity, my confidence, my refusal to be limited by conventional thinking. This was the validation I'd been seeking, proof that I was doing something meaningful, something that mattered. Nathan was already in bed when I came upstairs, facing away from me. I slipped in beside him, feeling satisfied and vindicated. Tomorrow was going to be perfect. I woke up on Saturday morning, expecting to find Nathan beside me, maybe finally ready to apologize for his behavior and embrace the beautiful day ahead. Instead, I found a note on his pillow. "Eveene, I've gone to my brother's house to think. I need space to process everything that's happened. The wedding is cancelled. I'm sorry. Nathan." I stared at the note, reading it 3 times before the words sank in. Cancelled? He couldn't be serious. This was just pre-wedding nerves, just his insecurity getting the better of him. I called his phone immediately. It went straight to voicemail. "Nathan, this is ridiculous," I said after the beep. "You can't just cancel our wedding because you're feeling insecure. Call me back so we can talk about this like adults." I tried again an hour later, then again an hour after that. Each call went to voicemail. By noon, I was panicking. I drove to Oliver's house, but Nathan's car wasn't in the driveway. I rang the doorbell anyway. "Eveene." Oliver opened the door looking uncomfortable. "I don't think this is a good idea." "Where is he, Oliver? We need to talk." "He doesn't want to talk right now." "This is our wedding day. He can't just disappear because he's having cold feet." Oliver sighed, stepping onto his porch and closing the door behind him. "Eveene, this isn't cold feet. This is him finally realizing that you care more about your ex-boyfriend than you do about him." "That's not true." isn't it? You invited Julian to your engagement party. You want him to walk you down the aisle. You post pictures of you two together on social media. You toast him at your own rehearsal dinner. What exactly did you think was going to happen? I thought Nathan would appreciate my emotional maturity. Emotional maturity? Oliver's voice rose slightly. You've been humiliating my brother for weeks, and you call it emotional maturity. I felt tears of frustration building. I've been trying to show everyone what evolved love looks like. Evolved love, Oliver repeated. Is that what you call making your fiancé feel like second choice at his own wedding? Nathan is not second choice. He's my future. Then why does it feel like Julian is your present? I couldn't answer that. I drove home feeling confused and angry. Why was everyone being so small-minded? Why couldn't they see what I was trying to accomplish? Back at our apartment, I called my mother. Darling, what's wrong? Shouldn't you be getting ready? Nathan left, I said, starting to cry. He cancelled the wedding. What? That's ridiculous. Over what? He says I care more about Julian than him. There was a pause. Well, that's clearly his insecurity talking. What does he expect you to do? Pretend your past never happened? Exactly. Mom, what should I do? Give him space to cool off, then make him see reason. Men get emotional about these things. He'll come around. But Nathan didn't come around. By Sunday, I still hadn't heard from him. I tried calling Maggie, but she answered coldly. Eveene, I think you've done enough. Mrs. Cole, please, I just want to talk to Nathan. My son has been clear about what he wants. I suggest you respect that. She hung up on me. I spent Sunday posting on social media, trying to control the narrative. I shared a photo of myself looking thoughtful by our apartment window, captioned, Sometimes love means taking space to grow. Grateful for patience, understanding, and the journey of becoming. Self-love, biestră, growth, trust. The responses were mixed. Some friends offered support, but others seemed confused. Several people asked directly what had happened to the wedding. I responded vaguely about taking time to honor our individual journeys. By Monday, I was getting worried. Nathan still wasn't answering his phone, and I'd heard nothing about when he might come home. I decided to go to his accounting firm downtown. I'm sorry, Ms. Door, the receptionist said. Mr. Cole isn't in today. When will he be back? I'm not sure. He's requested some personal time off. I left feeling more frustrated than ever. How was I supposed to fix this if he wouldn't even talk to me? That afternoon, I started getting emails. The first was from our wedding venue. Dear Ms. Door, we've received notification that your event scheduled for October 15th has been cancelled. Per the contract terms and Mr. Cole's request, we're processing a full refund to the card on file. Thank you for choosing Meridian Gardens. Then the caterer. Wedding cancellation confirmed. Refund processed to Nathan Cole's account as requested. The florist. Order cancelled per client request. Refund issued. The photographer. Event cancelled. Deposit refunded to original payment method. Every vendor, every service, every detail of our wedding was being systematically cancelled, and all the refunds were going to Nathan. He was erasing our entire wedding without saying a word to me. I called his phone again, desperate now. Nathan, please call me back. I don't understand what you're doing. We can work this out. I love you. Please don't throw away everything we have over a misunderstanding. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was a misunderstanding. Nathan's silence felt different from his usual conflict avoidance. This felt deliberate, calculated, final. Tuesday brought more emails. Our joint credit cards had been cancelled. The utilities at our apartment had been switched to my name only. Nathan had even cancelled the subscription to the meal delivery service we'd shared. He was methodically removing himself from every aspect of our shared life, and he was doing it without drama, without confrontation, without giving me any opportunity to argue or negotiate. It was like he was erasing himself from my story, one cancelled service at a time. I tried going to his office again on Wednesday. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, but Mr. Cole has left specific instructions that he's not available to meet with you. I'm his fiancée. I understand, but those are his instructions. I sat in the lobby for 2 hours, hoping he'd come out and see me, but he never did. Security eventually asked me to leave. That evening, I found an envelope slipped under our apartment door. Inside was my engagement ring and a note written in Nathan's careful handwriting. Eveene, I've arranged for movers to collect my belongings this weekend while you're at work. Please don't try to contact me. My lawyer will be in touch regarding any remaining shared obligations. I wish you well. Nathan. I stared at the ring, the diamond catching the light from our living room lamp. This couldn't be happening. People didn't just disappear like this, didn't just end relationships without explanation or discussion. But Nathan was doing exactly that. He was ending us with the same quiet efficiency he brought to his accounting work, methodically, thoroughly, and without any mess or drama. I was losing him, and I didn't even understand why. By Thursday, I was desperate enough to show up at Oliver's house again, this time early in the morning before he left for work. I waited by his car in the driveway. Eveene, you can't keep doing this, he said when he saw me. Oliver, please, I just need 5 minutes with Nathan, 5 minutes to explain. Explain what? That you didn't mean to humiliate him at every opportunity. That you didn't mean to make him feel like a stranger at his own engagement party and rehearsal dinner. I never meant to humiliate him. Then what did you mean to do? Oliver's voice was tired, like he'd had this conversation before. Because from where Nathan sits, you've spent months making it clear that Julian matters more to you than he does. That's not true, isn't it? You invited your ex to your engagement party. You wanted him to walk you down the aisle. You post pictures of you two together while barely mentioning Nathan. You toast Julian at your own rehearsal dinner while Nathan sits there looking like he wants to disappear. I felt tears starting again. I was trying to show how evolved our love was. Whose love, Eveene? Yours and Nathan's, or yours and Julian's? I couldn't answer that question, not honestly. Look, Oliver continued, Nathan asked me to give you a message if you came by again. He's not coming back. He's not going to fight for this relationship, and he's not going to give you the dramatic confrontation you seem to want. He's done. He can't just be done. We were supposed to get married. You were supposed to marry him, but it seems like you wanted to marry Julian and have Nathan as a witness. Oliver got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing in his driveway feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. That afternoon, I received a call from a law office downtown. Ms. Door, this is Jennifer Martinez from Hartwell & Associates. I'm calling on behalf of Nathan Cole regarding the dissolution of your shared obligations. Shared obligations? The lease on your apartment, joint accounts, shared debts, that sort of thing. Mr. Cole would like to handle this as amicably as possible. I want to talk to Nathan directly. I'm afraid that's not possible. Mr. Cole has requested that all communication go through our office. This is insane. You can't just end a relationship through lawyers. Ms. Door, Mr. Cole isn't trying to end your relationship. According to him, you already did that. He's simply handling the practical matters that result from that decision. I hung up, furious and confused. How was I the one who ended the relationship? I wasn't the one who ran away. I wasn't the one hiding behind lawyers. But even as I thought it, a small voice in my head whispered that maybe Nathan had a point. Maybe I had been ending our relationship slowly, publicly, without even realizing it. I pushed that voice away. I was the victim here. I was the one being abandoned, being treated like a stranger by the man who claimed to love me. I called Julian, needing someone who would understand, someone who would validate my perspective. Eveene, I heard about the wedding. I'm so sorry. Julian, I don't know what to do. Nathan just disappeared. He won't talk to me. He's handling everything through lawyers. He's acting like I'm some kind of criminal. That's awful. You deserve better than that. Do you think I did something wrong? Everyone keeps saying I humiliated him, but I was just trying to be honest about my past, about what you meant to me. There was a pause. Eveene, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really invite me to your engagement party? The question caught me off guard. Because you're important to me. Because I wanted to show that I'm not ashamed of our relationship. And the aisle thing? Because it would have been beautiful, symbolic. Another pause. Eveene, I need to be honest with you. I think maybe you invited me because you weren't sure about marrying Nathan. That's not true, isn't it? Because if you were completely sure, completely happy, completely in love with him, would you have needed me there? I couldn't answer that. The question hit too close to something I didn't want to examine. I have to go, I said, and hung up. Friday brought another envelope under my door. This one contained official-looking documents with the law firm's letterhead. Nathan was formally requesting that I remove his name from our lease, that I stop using his name or image on social media, and that I refrain from contacting his family or workplace. There was also a check, his half of the security deposit on our apartment, his portion of the utility bills, his share of everything we'd split as a couple. He was paying me off, settling every debt between us with the same methodical precision he brought to his accounting work. At the bottom of the letter was a single paragraph that made my stomach drop. Please be advised that Mr. Cole has documented evidence of your public statements and social media posts regarding your relationship with Julian Marrow, including but not limited to your engagement party invitation, your social media interactions, and your stated intention to have Mr. Marrow participate in your wedding ceremony. Mr. Cole considers these actions to constitute emotional infidelity and public humiliation. Any attempt to portray Mr. Cole as the aggressor in this situation will be met with the release of this documentation. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. Nathan had been building a case against me. While I thought he was just being quiet and moody, he'd been documenting everything, every photo, every comment, every decision I'd made about Julian. He hadn't just walked away from our relationship. He'd prepared for war, and he'd done it so quietly, so thoroughly, that I'd never seen it coming. The man I thought I knew, conflict-avoidant, gentle Nathan, had been replaced by someone strategic, someone who fought with legal documents instead of raised voices, and I was losing. Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of trucks in our parking lot. Through the bedroom window, I watched 3 men in uniform loading Nathan's furniture, his clothes, his books, his entire half of our shared life into a moving van. I ran downstairs in my pajamas, but the movers had a court order. I wasn't allowed to interfere, wasn't allowed to take anything that belonged to Nathan, wasn't even allowed to ask where they were taking his things. In 2 hours, they stripped our apartment of every trace of him. The bookshelf where he kept his accounting journals, the coffee maker he'd bought because he liked his coffee stronger than I did, the framed photo of us from our first vacation together, even the spare phone charger he kept by his side of the bed. When they finished, our apartment looked like a stranger lived there, like Nathan had never existed at all. I spent the weekend in a haze, scrolling through social media and seeing all the posts from friends who'd attended other weddings, other celebrations, other happy occasions. My own social media felt frozen in time. The last post was still my grateful for the journey photo from the week before. I started typing several different posts, trying to explain what had happened, trying to control the narrative, trying to make myself look like the victim rather than the villain. But every version I wrote sounded hollow, defensive, desperate. Finally, I posted a simple message, taking time to focus on personal growth and healing. Thank you for your patience and love during this transition. The responses were polite but distant. People offered generic support, but no one asked for details. No one demanded to know what Nathan had done to me. No one seemed surprised that our relationship had ended. Maybe they'd all seen it coming, except me. Monday brought the final envelope. This one was thick, official, and required my signature to receive. Inside were settlement documents, non-disclosure agreements, and a letter from Nathan's lawyer explaining that this was his final communication regarding our relationship. Nathan had calculated every shared expense, every joint obligation, every financial entanglement between us. He'd paid his portion of everything down to the penny, including his half of the groceries in our refrigerator and his portion of the internet bill for the current month. But the most devastating part was the evidence packet. Screenshots of every social media post I'd made about Julian. Photos from the engagement party showing me gazing at Julian while Nathan stood awkwardly to the side. A transcript of Julian's rehearsal dinner toast with certain phrases highlighted in yellow. Love isn't about holding on. Choose adventure over safety. We'll never settle. There were even witness statements from wedding guests describing my behavior, my obvious preference for Julian's company, my apparent disregard for Nathan's feelings. My own mother had given a statement. Eveene has always been drawn to exciting, artistic men. Nathan is a good man, but perhaps too stable for her tastes. Reading it felt like looking at myself through a stranger's eyes. Every choice I'd made, every decision I'd thought was evolved and progressive, looked selfish and cruel when laid out in black and white. The final document was a restraining order. If I contacted Nathan, his family, or his workplace again, I could be arrested. I sat on my empty couch, surrounded by legal papers, finally understanding what Nathan had done. He hadn't just left me. He'd systematically, methodically, and completely erased himself from my life while making sure I couldn't spin the story to make him look like the villain. He'd fought back not with drama or confrontation, but with documentation and legal precision. He'd used my own actions, my own words, my own social media posts as weapons against me. And he'd won. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your belongings from my office have been donated to charity as requested. Please don't contact this number again. Nathan had even gotten rid of the few personal items I'd left at his workplace. The spare makeup bag, the emergency phone charger, the framed photo of us he'd kept on his desk. I was completely, utterly erased from his life. I tried calling Julian, needing someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, wasn't the villain in this story. But his phone went straight to voicemail, and he didn't call back. Over the next few days, I realized that Julian had disappeared too. His social media had gone quiet, his phone calls went unanswered, and when I drove by his apartment, his car wasn't there. It occurred to me that maybe Julian had never been the prize I thought he was. Maybe he'd enjoyed the drama, the attention, the chaos of disrupting someone else's relationship, but had no interest in dealing with the aftermath. Maybe I'd destroyed my relationship with Nathan for someone who'd never actually wanted me back. I deleted Julian's number from my phone. Then, I deleted my social media accounts entirely. I couldn't bear to see the evidence of my own mistakes, couldn't stand to read the comments from friends who'd watched me destroy my relationship in real time. 2 weeks later, I ran into Oliver at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me, but didn't avoid me entirely. "How is he?" I asked quietly. "He's doing well," Oliver replied. "He's moving on." "Oliver, I never meant—" "I know," he said gently, "but sometimes our intentions don't matter as much as our actions." I lost him. "Yeah, you did." "I don't know how to fix it." Oliver looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Eveene, some things can't be fixed. Some mistakes are too big, too public, too hurtful. Nathan gave you everything he had, and you threw it away for someone who didn't even want it." I started crying right there in the cereal aisle, and Oliver handed me a tissue from his pocket. "The thing is," he continued, "Nathan didn't want to hurt you. He just wanted to protect himself, so he did it the only way he knew how, quietly, legally, completely. I loved him. Maybe you did, but you loved the idea of being the kind of person who could have both Nathan and Julian more than you loved Nathan himself." Oliver walked away, leaving me standing alone among the breakfast cereals, finally understanding the truth of what I'd done. I'd had a good man who loved me completely, and I'd traded him for the approval of strangers, for the validation of an ex-boyfriend who'd never really wanted me back, for the illusion that I was more evolved and sophisticated than I actually was. Nathan's revenge wasn't dramatic or cruel. It was just thorough. He'd removed himself from my life so completely, so legally, so permanently, that I couldn't even try to win him back. I drove home to my empty apartment, sat on my half-empty couch, and stared at the space where Nathan's things used to be. The silence was deafening. I'd wanted to write a love story that would inspire others, that would show the world what modern relationships could look like. Instead, I'd written a cautionary tale about the difference between emotional evolution and emotional selfishness. Nathan had let me tell my story exactly the way I wanted to tell it, and then he'd used that story to show everyone exactly who I really was. The most devastating part wasn't that he'd left me. It was that he'd been right to leave me. I picked up the engagement ring from the coffee table, where it had been sitting since he'd returned it. The diamond caught the light from the window, sparkling brilliantly, beautifully, meaninglessly. I'd had everything I'd ever wanted, and I'd thrown it away for nothing. Nathan was gone, Julian was gone, and I was exactly where I deserved to be, alone with the consequences of my choices, finally understanding that some stories don't have happy endings. Some stories just have endings.